I'll never forget what happened to me at the library about 3 years ago. I was a college student at the time, and I spent a lot of time studying there. Because my apartment was too noisy with roommates constantly coming and going. The library on campus was huge and had multiple floors, and I usually went to the third floor because it was the quietest. One night, I was there studying for finals, and it was getting pretty late, probably around 10 p.m. or so. The library closed at midnight, so I knew I had a couple more hours to get work done. I was sitting at a table in the corner of the third floor, and I was the only person up there, at least that I could see. I had my headphones in and was focused on my studying when I noticed someone walk past me out of the corner of my eye. I looked up and saw a man walking slowly down one of the aisles of books. He was wearing all black clothes and had a baseball cap pulled down low over his face. Something about him immediately made me uncomfortable, but I tried to ignore it and went back to studying. About 10 minutes later, I looked up again, and the man was now standing at the end of my aisle, just staring at me. I pulled my headphones out and asked if he needed something, but he didn't say anything. He just kept staring at me with this blank expression on his face. I felt my heart start to race, and I quickly packed up my things and decided to go down to the second floor instead. I took the stairs down and found another empty table to sit at. I tried to calm myself down and told myself I was just being paranoid. But about 20 minutes later, I saw the same man walking slowly past the second floor stairwell. He was looking around as if he was searching for something or someone. I knew he was looking for me. I immediately got up and went to the front desk where the librarian was sitting. I told her about the man and how he was following me. She said she would call campus security and asked me to wait with her at the desk. We waited for maybe 5 minutes, and then we saw the man come down the main staircase. When he saw me standing with the librarian, he suddenly turned around and walked quickly out of the library. Campus security arrived a few minutes later, and I gave them a description of the man. They searched the area, but never found him. After that night, I never studied alone at the library again, especially not late at night. I still wonder what that man wanted and what would have happened if I hadn't gone to the librarian. This happened to me last summer when I was working as a delivery driver for a food app. I had been doing deliveries for about 6 months, and it was a pretty easy way to make extra money. Most of the time, the deliveries were straightforward, and I never had any problems with customers. But one night, I got an order that I'll never forget. It was around 9:30 p.m., and I accepted an order from a restaurant that was about 15 minutes away. The delivery address was to a house in a neighborhood I had never been to before. It was in a more rural area on the outskirts of town, and the houses were spread pretty far apart from each other. I picked up the food and started driving to the address. As I got closer to the neighborhood, I noticed there were very few streetlights, and it was getting really dark. My GPS took me down a long, winding road, and eventually I arrived at the house. It was a small one-story house that looked pretty run down. There were no lights on inside and no cars in the driveway. I grabbed the food and walked up to the front door. I knocked a few times, but nobody answered. I waited for maybe 30 seconds and knocked again. Still no answer. I looked at my phone, and the delivery instructions said to leave the food at the door if nobody answered. So that's what I decided to do. As I was setting the food down, I heard a noise coming from the side of the house. It sounded like footsteps on gravel. I looked over but couldn't see anything because it was so dark. I quickly took a picture of the food at the door like I was supposed to and started walking back to my car. That's when I heard the footsteps again, but this time they were much closer. I turned around and saw a figure standing near the corner of the house, just watching me. I couldn't make out any details because of how dark it was, but I could tell it was a person. I said hello, but they didn't respond. I got into my car as fast as I could and locked the doors. I started the engine, and as I was backing out of the driveway, I saw the figure start walking towards my car. They were moving fast, and I could tell they were trying to reach me before I could drive away. I hit the gas and sped out of there. As I was driving away, I looked in my rearview mirror and saw the figure standing in the middle of the road, watching my car disappear. I reported the incident to the delivery app, and they told me I didn't have to take any more orders to that address. I never found out who that person was or why they were hiding in the dark, waiting for me to show up. When I was 16 years old, I got my first job working at a fast food restaurant in my hometown. It was a pretty typical first job, and I worked mostly evening shifts and weekends. The restaurant was in a busy area near the mall, so we always had a lot of customers coming through. Most of my co-workers were around my age, and we all got along pretty well. There was one guy who worked there, though, who always made me uncomfortable. His name was Derek, and he was in his early 30s. He was one of the shift managers, and he had been working there for several years. From the first day I started, Derek would make comments to me that seemed inappropriate. He would tell me I looked nice or ask me personal questions about my life outside of work. I tried to ignore it first and just focus on doing my job, but Derek's behavior got worse over time. He started finding excuses to work the same shifts as me, and he would always try to work in the same area of the restaurant. If I was working the register, he would be right there next to me. If I was in the kitchen, he would find a reason to come back there. One night, I was working a closing shift, and it was just me, Derek, and one other coworker named Sarah. We were cleaning up after we had closed, and Sarah left a little early because she wasn't feeling well. That left just me and Derek alone in the restaurant to finish closing. I was in the dining area wiping down tables when Derek came up behind me. He stood really close to me and asked if I wanted a ride home since it was so late. I told him no thank you and that my dad was picking me up. Derek then put his hand on my shoulder and said he could wait with me until my dad arrived. I pulled away from him and said I was fine. I walked to the back to get my things, and Derek followed me. He kept insisting that he should wait with me and that it wasn't safe for me to be alone. I told him again that I was fine and that I needed to finish cleaning. Derek finally left me alone and went to the office. I quickly finished my cleaning and went out the back door to wait for my dad in the parking lot. I stood under one of the lights near the building and called my dad to see how close he was. He said he was about 5 minutes away. As I was waiting, I saw Derek come out of the restaurant through the same door I had just used. He walked over to me and asked me again if I was sure I didn't want to ride. I told him my dad was almost there and I was fine. Derek then said something that made my blood run cold. He said, "You know, I've been watching you for a while now, and I think we could be really good together." I didn't know what to say. I just stood there frozen. Derek started walking closer to me, and that's when I saw my dad's car pull into the parking lot. I ran to the car and got in as fast as I could. My dad could tell something was wrong, and I told him everything that had happened. The next day, my dad called the restaurant and spoke to the general manager. Derek was fired immediately. I found out later that other young female employees had complained about him before, but the management hadn't taken it seriously enough. I quit that job shortly after because I didn't feel safe there anymore. About 4 years ago, I was living alone in a small apartment in the city. It was my first time living by myself, and I was pretty excited about having my own place. The apartment was on the second floor of an older building, and it had one bedroom, a small kitchen, and a living room. It wasn't anything fancy, but it was affordable and in a decent area. I had been living there for about 3 months when I started noticing some strange things. At first, it was small stuff like items being moved around in my apartment. I would leave something on the kitchen counter and come home to find it on the table. Or I would leave a book on my nightstand and later find it on my dresser. I thought maybe I was just forgetting where I had put things. But then things started getting weirder. I would come home and find my windows open when I knew I had closed them before I left. Or I would find the TV on even though I had definitely turned it off. One time I came home and all the lights in my apartment were on when I had left them off. I started to get really paranoid about it. I wondered if maybe someone had a key to my apartment and was coming in when I wasn't there. I asked my landlord about it, and he said nobody else should have a key except for him, and he promised he hadn't been in my apartment. He said he would change the locks for me just to be safe. After the locks were changed, I felt a little better, but the strange things kept happening. One night, I was lying in bed trying to fall asleep when I heard a noise coming from my living room. It sounded like someone was walking around. I sat up in bed and listened carefully. I definitely heard footsteps. I was terrified. I grabbed my phone and got ready to call the police. I slowly opened my bedroom door and peeked out into the living room. I couldn't see anyone, but I could still hear the footsteps. They seemed to be coming from near my kitchen. I turned on the light in my bedroom, and the footsteps immediately stopped. Everything was silent. I waited for maybe 5 minutes, but I didn't hear anything else. I finally got the courage to walk out into my living room with my phone in my hand, ready to call 911. I checked every room in my apartment, but there was nobody there. All the windows were closed and the front door was still locked. I had no idea what I had heard. I didn't sleep at all that night. The next morning I told my landlord what had happened, and he seemed genuinely concerned. He said he would check with the tenant, who lived below me, to see if they had heard anything. A few hours later, my landlord called me back and told me something that made my skin crawl. He said the apartment below mine had been vacant for over a month. There was nobody living there. The footsteps I had heard couldn't have come from downstairs because there was nobody down there. I moved out of that apartment the following week. I never found out what was causing all the strange things that happened there, but I wasn't willing to stay and find out. To this day, I still don't know what I heard that night, but I know it was real. This story takes place during a road trip I took with my girlfriend about 2 years ago. We had been planning this trip for months, and we were both really excited about it. We were driving from our home in California to Colorado to visit some national parks and go hiking. We left early on a Saturday morning, and the plan was to drive for 2 days with an overnight stop somewhere in between. The first day of driving went smoothly, and we made it to a small town in Utah by the evening. We found a cheap motel off the highway and decided to stay there for the night. The motel was pretty run down, but we didn't care because we just needed a place to sleep. We checked in, and the guy at the front desk gave us a key to room 114. The room was on the first floor at the far end of the building away from the office. We parked our car right in front of our room and brought our bags inside. The room was exactly what you'd expect from a cheap roadside motel. 2 beds, a small TV, and a bathroom that had seen better days. But it was clean enough, and we were too tired to care. We decided to go grab some dinner at a diner we had seen down the road. We left our stuff in the room and drove to the diner. We had a nice meal and talked about our plans for the next day. After dinner, we drove back to the motel, and it was around 9 p.m. by the time we got back to our room. As we were walking up to our door, I noticed that the door to the room next to ours, room 116, was slightly open. I could see that the lights were off inside. I didn't think much of it at first, but as I was putting the key in our door, I heard a noise coming from room 116. It sounded like someone was moving around in there. I looked at my girlfriend, and she had heard it too. We stood there for a second listening, and then we heard what sounded like someone whispering. We couldn't make out what they were saying, but it was definitely a human voice. I knocked on the door to room 116 and asked if everything was okay. There was no response. The whispering stopped and everything went quiet. I pushed the door open a little more and peeked inside. It was pitch black and I couldn't see anything. My girlfriend said we should just go into our room and mind our own business. I agreed, and we went inside and locked our door. We got ready for bed, and I tried not to think about the room next door, but I couldn't shake the weird feeling I had about it. Around midnight, I woke up to the sound of someone knocking on our door. It was a slow, deliberate knock. 3 knocks, then silence, then 3 more knocks. I sat up in bed and looked at the door. My girlfriend was still asleep. I waited to see if the knocking would continue, but it stopped. I laid back down and tried to go back to sleep. But then I heard the knocking again. This time it was louder and more aggressive. My girlfriend woke up and asked me what was going on. I got out of bed and looked through the peephole in our door. I couldn't see anyone standing outside. The knocking stopped again. I stood there watching through the peephole for a few minutes, but I didn't see anything. I went back to bed, and we both tried to go back to sleep. But about 10 minutes later, we heard the sound of our door handle being jiggled. Someone was trying to open our door. I jumped out of bed and yelled, "Who's there?" But there was no response. The door handle stopped moving, and then we heard footsteps walking away from our door. I looked through the peephole again, and this time I saw a figure walking past our window. It was too dark to see any details, but I could tell it was a person. We decided we weren't going to stay in that room anymore. We quickly packed up our stuff and went to the car. As we were loading our bags, I looked over at room 116 and saw that the door was now wide open. The lights were still off inside, and I couldn't see anything. We drove away from that motel as fast as we could and found another place to stay about an hour down the road. We never found out who was knocking on our door that night or what was going on in room 116. But I know we made the right decision by leaving when we did. I used to work as a security guard in an office building downtown. It was a night shift position, and I worked from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. 5 nights a week. The building had about 15 floors, and most of the tenants were small businesses and professional offices. During the day, the building would be bustling with people, but at night, it was completely empty except for me. My job was pretty straightforward. I would do rounds of the building every hour to make sure everything was secure, and I would monitor security cameras from my desk in the lobby. It was usually a pretty boring job, but the pay was decent, and I didn't mind working nights. I had been working there for about 8 months when something happened that I still can't explain. It was a Tuesday night, and everything had been normal up until about 2 a.m. I had just finished my hourly rounds and was sitting at my desk watching security camera feeds. I noticed on one of the cameras that showed the 8th floor hallway there was something moving. At first I thought maybe it was just a shadow or the camera glitching, but as I watched I could see what looked like a person walking down the hallway. This immediately set off alarm bells because nobody should have been in the building at that time. All the offices were closed and I hadn't let anyone in. I grabbed my flashlight and my radio and took the elevator up to the 8th floor. When I got there, the hallway was empty and all the lights were off except for the emergency exit signs. I walked down the hallway, checking each office door to make sure they were locked. Everything seemed secure. I was about to head back downstairs when I heard a door close somewhere on the floor. I stopped and listened carefully. I heard footsteps coming from one of the hallways that branched off from where I was standing. I called out and asked if anyone was there, but nobody responded. I walked towards where I had heard the sound and saw that one of the office doors was slightly open. I knew for a fact that door had been closed and locked when I had walked past it just moments before. I pushed the door open slowly and shined my flashlight inside. The office was empty, but I could see that one of the desk chairs had been moved and was facing the window. I walked into the office to investigate further, and that's when I heard the door slam shut behind me. I spun around and tried the door handle, but it wouldn't turn. The door was locked from the outside. I started to panic, and I pounded on the door and yelled for help, but I knew nobody could hear me. I took out my radio to call for backup, but it wasn't working. There was just static. My cell phone had no signal either. I was trapped in that office with no way to communicate with anyone. I decided to try the windows to see if I could signal to someone outside, but when I got to the window, I saw something that made my heart stop. Standing on the sidewalk 8 stories below was a figure looking up at me. Even from that distance, I could tell they were staring directly at me. I backed away from the window and tried the door again. This time it opened easily. I ran out of that office and back to the elevator as fast as I could. When I got back down to the lobby, I immediately checked the security cameras. I rewound the footage to see if I could see who had locked me in that office. But when I watched the footage of the 8th floor, there was nothing. No person walking down hallways. No doors opening or closing. Just empty hallways. I quit that job the next day. I don't know what happened to me that night, but I know it wasn't normal. I've never been able to explain it, and I've never gone back to that building. When I was in college, I had a part-time job working at a movie theater. It was a pretty fun job most of the time, and I got to see free movies whenever I wanted. I worked mostly evening and weekend shifts, and I usually worked with few other people, so I was never alone. One night, I was scheduled to close the theater with my co-worker James. We had the last showing in around 11 p.m., and then we had to clean up the theaters and lock everything up before we could leave. This usually took about an hour or so. On this particular night, we had cleaned all but one of the theaters. It was theater number 7, which was one of the smaller theaters toward the back of the building. James said he would take care of theater 7 while I finished up some other closing duties in the lobby. I was counting the registers when I heard James yelling for me from the back. I ran back to see what was wrong and found him standing outside theater 7 looking pale. He said he had been cleaning the theater when he heard someone talking inside one of the bathroom stalls in the theater bathroom. Each theater had its own small bathroom, and they were usually empty by the time we started cleaning. James said he had checked all the stalls when he first went in, and they were empty, but then a few minutes later, he heard someone in one of them. I told him we should check it out together. We walked into the bathroom, and sure enough, we could hear someone in the last stall. It sounded like they were talking to themselves, but we couldn't make out what they were saying. James knocked on the stall door and asked if everything was okay. The talking stopped immediately. We waited for a response, but there was nothing. James knocked again, and this time, he said that the theater was closed and whoever was in there needed to leave. Still no response. James and I looked at each other, and he shrugged. He bent down to look under the stall door to see if he could see the person's feet. But when he looked, he immediately stood back up with a shocked expression on his face. He whispered to me that there was nobody in the stall. No feet, nothing. But we had both clearly heard someone talking in there just seconds ago. I bent down to look for myself, and he was right. The stall was empty. I stood up, and we both backed away from the stall. We decided we were going to open the door to see for ourselves. James reached over and pushed the stall door open. It swung open slowly, and we could see that the stall was completely empty. We quickly left the bathroom and finished cleaning the theater as fast as we could. Neither of us said much as we locked up and left the night. We never told our manager what happened because we knew it sounded crazy. But about a week later, one of our other co-workers mentioned that Theater 7 gave them a weird feeling. They said they always felt like someone was watching them when they were in there alone. After that, I tried to avoid being in Theater 7 by myself whenever possible. This happened to me when I was visiting my aunt in Florida about 5 years ago. She lived in a small beach town, and I had gone down to visit her for a long weekend. One afternoon, I decided to go for a walk along the beach by myself while my aunt was at work. The beach was pretty empty because it was a weekday and the weather wasn't that great. It was overcast and windy, but I didn't mind. I walked along the shoreline for about 20 minutes, enjoying the peace and quiet. I was about to turn around and head back when I noticed someone walking towards me from the opposite direction. As they got closer, I could see it was a woman. She was wearing a long white dress and had long dark hair. She was walking slowly and seemed to be looking down at the sand. As we got closer to each other, I smiled and said hello. She looked up at me and smiled back, but she didn't say anything. I noticed that she looked really pale, almost sickly. Her eyes were dark, and she had this strange expression on her face that I couldn't quite read. I continued walking past her and thought nothing more of it. But after I had walked maybe 20 feet past her, I had this overwhelming urge to turn around and look back at her. When I did, I saw that she had stopped walking and was now standing still facing my direction. She was just standing there staring at me. I felt a chill run down my spine, and I quickly turned back around and kept walking. I walked faster, now wanting to put some distance between us. After about a minute, I looked back again and saw that the woman was now walking again, but she was following me. She was still pretty far behind me, but she was definitely following in my direction. I started to jog, and I looked back again. The woman had started jogging too. She was keeping pace with me and maintaining the same distance between us. I started to run now. My heart was pounding, and I just wanted to get off the beach and back to my aunt's house. I looked back one more time and saw that the woman was running too. She was getting closer to me now. I ran as fast as I could until I reached the stairs that led up from the beach to the street level. I took the stairs two at a time, and when I got to the top, I looked back down at the beach. The woman was at the bottom of the stairs looking up at me. She was just standing there with that same strange expression on her face. I didn't wait to see what she would do next. I ran all the way back to my aunt's house and locked the door behind me. I never saw that woman again during my visit, but I never went back to that beach alone either. There was something about her that wasn't right, and I'm glad I trusted my instincts and ran when I did. About a year ago, I was driving home from work late one night. I worked as a nurse, and I had just finished a 12-hour shift, so I was exhausted. It was around 11:30 p.m., and I was taking my usual route home, which included a stretch of country road that didn't have any street lights. I had driven this route hundreds of times, and I never thought anything of it. But on this night, something happened that I'll never forget. I was about halfway down the dark country road when I saw something in my headlights up ahead. At first, I thought it was an animal crossing the road, but as I got closer, I realized it was a person. They were standing in the middle of the road facing my car. I slowed down and came to a stop about 20 feet away from them. I couldn't see their face clearly because of the glare from my headlights, but I could see that they were wearing dark clothing, and they were just standing there completely still. I honked my horn, thinking maybe they didn't realize they were in the middle of the road. They didn't move. I honked again, and this time I rolled down my window and yelled, "Get out of the road." Still nothing. The person just stood there staring at my car. I was starting to get annoyed now. I thought maybe this person was drunk or on drugs. I put my car in park and opened my door to get out and talk to them. But as soon as I opened my door, the person suddenly started walking towards my car. They were walking fast and with purpose. I immediately felt that something was wrong. I got back in my car and locked the doors. The person was now running towards my car. I could see their face now in my headlights, and what I saw terrified me. Their face was completely emotionless. No expression at all. Just blank. And their eyes were wide open, staring directly at me. I put my car in reverse and started backing up as fast as I could. The person kept running toward my car, and they were fast. I kept backing up until I had enough room to turn my car around. I did a quick 3-point turn and started driving back the way I had come. I looked in my rear view mirror and saw the person was still running after my car. They were running in the middle of the road, and they weren't slowing down. I floored it and sped away. I took a different route home that night, even though it added an extra 20 minutes to my drive. I reported what happened to the police, but they said they didn't find anyone when they went to check the area. I still don't know who that person was or why they were standing in the middle of the road that night, but I never took that country road home again after dark. This last story happened to me just a few months ago, and it still freaks me out to think about it. I was at the grocery store doing my weekly shopping on a Sunday afternoon. The store was pretty busy, which was normal for a weekend. I was in the produce section picking out some vegetables when I noticed a man standing nearby. He was just standing there looking at me. When I made eye contact with him, he quickly looked away. I thought maybe I knew him from somewhere, but I didn't recognize his face. I moved on to another aisle and continued shopping. A few minutes later, I saw the same man again. He was at the end of the aisle I was in, just standing there. Again, when I looked at him, he looked away. I started to feel uncomfortable. I finished getting what I needed from that aisle and moved to another part of the store. But no matter where I went, I kept seeing this man. He was always nearby, always watching me. I tried to shake it off and tell myself I was being paranoid. I finished my shopping and went check out. I was loading my groceries onto the conveyor belt when I noticed a man was in line a few people behind me. He wasn't holding any groceries or a shopping basket. He was just standing in line watching me. That was it. I had had enough. After I paid for my groceries, I quickly grabbed my bags and headed out to my car. I was walking to the parking lot when I heard footsteps behind me. I looked back and saw the man following me. I walked faster and got to my car. I quickly unlocked it and threw my groceries in the back seat. Just as I was about to get in the driver's seat, the man appeared right next to my car. He was standing so close to me that I couldn't close my door. He looked at me and said, "I know you." I told him I didn't know him and asked him to back away from my car. He didn't move. He just kept staring at me with this intense look in his eyes. I told him I was going to call the police if he didn't leave me alone. He finally took a step back, and I was able to close my door and lock it. I started my car, and as I was backing out, he was still standing there watching me. I drove straight to the police station and filed a report. They took my statement and said they would increase patrols in the area. I gave him a description of the man and told him about his behavior in the store. I haven't seen that man since, but every time I go to that grocery store now, I'm constantly looking over my shoulder. I hate that one person can make me feel so unsafe doing something as simple as grocery shopping. These stories are all true, and they all happen to me at different points in my life. I share them not to scare people, but to remind everyone to trust their instincts. If something feels wrong, it probably is. Stay safe out there.